They always said I'm wrong, but what they doing today? I think they want me gone, but I ain't going away. They told me I was wrong, but look at my ass today. Da 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 da.
Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim. This is the Real Sports Talk. Thank you for tuning in. If you did not see Monday Night Football last night, while the score was only 28-13, for all intensive purposes, it was a beatdown. And it was a beatdown from the Saints, who have the worst, one of the worst defenses in NFL history to this point of the season. So it was not pretty. Just an awful, putrid performance all the way around. Drew Brees tore up the Eagles' defense. The Eagles' defense could not stop anything. The offensive line for the Eagles, one of the worst performances I've ever seen in any football game I've ever watched from any team at the high school level, college, pro, AFL, any football. That is one of the worst, if not the worst, performances that I have ever seen from the offensive line. And people want to blame Michael Vick, and I've been waiting for a few weeks to really get my thoughts together, but after last night, I really got them together. It's not that Michael Vick has had a very good season or lived up to the $100 million contract that he got before last season, because he didn't have a great season last year, and he's certainly not having a great season this year, but I'm not sure he's been put in a position where he truly can be successful. I've been on the record as saying that I don't think he can win a Super Bowl. People say that he's not smart enough or he doesn't watch enough film and study enough. Whatever the case is, that may be true, but he hasn't even been given the chance right now to really sit back and make the plays and try and figure things out, because he's on his back every play. So the reason I'm standing up and the reason I have the football out, this nice Eagles football, is that I'm going to kind of demonstrate exactly what Michael Vick is going through, and hopefully that drives the point home to those of you who are trying to blame Michael Vick and hopping on the Nick Foles bandwagon. So Michael Vick will get the ball here. This is when he's under center. Now when he's back in the shotgun, which was actually quite a bit last night because that's basically what they had to do, when he's back in the shotgun then it's different. But when he's under center, this is what it looks like. He's under center, he takes the snap, he drops back 1-2, and either he's hit or the ball's behind him because it got knocked loose, or he is forced to just kind of throw it away and hope that good things happen. And I think that's been one of the reasons that there have been so many interceptions this year, is you get that 1-2 and then the ball's got to be out, or you're on the ground. I mean, even as elusive as Michael Vick is, and he may not be as elusive as he was in Atlanta, but we still see flashes of it from Michael Vick. 2 seconds you cannot do anything in. Now there's certain times where you can take a 2-step and throw a post route. Okay, that's fine. But you're not going to do that every single play of an entire football game because it's not a winning formula. So the offensive line last night, whether it was from Dallas Reynolds at center, Todd Herman's had a horrible game, and then he got injured anyway. King Dunlap, Demetrius Bell, anyone on this offensive line, Danny Watkins, they all look atrocious this season. I don't know what it is, because last year, well, I do know what it is, but last year, the first season when the offensive line coach, not Jim Washburn, Howard Mudd came in, he looked great. He really worked well with these guys. He made Jason Kelce a borderline Pro Bowl center. Jason Kelce's gone. Jason Peters, left tackle, was all pro. He's out for the season. Todd Herman's on the right side. He had shifted from left guard to right tackle. He had a season that looked like he was a borderline Pro Bowl right tackle last season. The offensive line was really pretty steady last year. It didn't have great depth, but it looked good. So when these people step in, I was expecting at least something better than this, and that's not what has happened, and I think Jim Washburn should probably be the first one that is out of here. But when Michael Vick has no time, he gets that 1-2 step drop, and he just has to throw it up. Now, I'm not lefty, so if it looks awkward, whatever, Michael Vick has an awkward throwing motion anyway. When you have that type of time, it gets in your head, because how many times do you see Tom Brady have to take 1-2 step and get rid of it right away, or he's down on the ground? How many times do you see that with Peyton Manning or Drew Brees or any of these guys? They have great offensive lines, and the Drew Brees is the perfect guy to look at because Drew Brees, he's small. He's barely 6 foot. Michael Vick's about 5'11", 6 foot, right in the same area. So if you're going to have huge offensive linemen, which you do in the NFL, in college you have the speedier type, but in the NFL you're going to have the huge offensive linemen. It's actually very tough for them to see over it. So Drew Brees, what he has is he has a bunch of tall receivers, and he has a great offensive line that gives him time to get the ball out. He has great check down options from his running backs. There's never an issue really with Drew Brees getting sacked. Ever. And that's why that offense is so successful. Then you go to Michael Vick. He has an offensive line that is letting just everything get through. He has small, inconsistent wide receivers who DeSean Jackson doesn't know how to run routes. And Jeremy Maclin. Yeah, it's nice that DeSean Jackson stretches the field, but if you know that DeSean Jackson's only going to be making an impact on 4 or 5 plays a game tops, then it makes it a lot easier to cover guys like Jeremy Maclin. Brent Selleck is out there too, and he really has not had a great season. And quite honestly, Brent Selleck should be back as that. They need to keep him back to block. They're not doing it. They did it 2 years ago. I don't know why they're not doing it now, but they're not. So that's my point about the offensive line. Then you had the Brent Selleck drop. Michael Vick, they're in the red zone. Michael Vick makes a pass about here. Brent Selleck gets his hands out, tips it, and it's a 98-yard interception return for a touchdown, 7-0 Saints. It wasn't a great throw by Michael Vick, but you're an NFL tight end, Brent Selleck, and I'm a big Brent Selleck fan. But how do you not reel that in? You have it there, at least get a hand on it and try and pull it back in. Instead, he gets he tips it, and it just goes to the defender, and it's a 98-yard interception return. That's what I don't get. DeSean Jackson, you could say, well, DeSean Jackson had 100 yards receiving last night. That's great. That was on 3 catches. So what is he doing the rest of the game? He's running deep pretty much every time, and he's not really making that much of an impact. That's one of the reasons I've soured on DeSean Jackson and really did not even want to see him come back this year, is because he doesn't make enough of an impact. He's not making 8 or 9 catches. He's making 2 to 4 catches on a good day, and that's not good enough to be your number 1 receiver, to be that guy that we thought a few years ago could be a top 5 receiver. Well, it's not happening. And he had the touchdown last night. That was great. The Saints have one of the worst defenses in NFL history. But DeSean Jackson also had another ball go straight through his hands last night in the end zone. Michael Vick fired it in there right through his hands. Should have been a touchdown, and I think they ended up settling for a field goal. I mean, it is what it is. The Saints have, statistically, I'm not exaggerating this, one of the worst defenses to this point in NFL history. It was so easy for them last night. They just dialed up all-out blitzes the entire first half, and the Eagles really didn't have any answer because they would have 4 or 5 guys in, and 6 guys come crashing in, and every single time someone was getting to Michael Vick, if not 2 people. Because you have one more guy running in at the quarterback than offensive linemen. But then you have offensive linemen who are not playing very well, and they're letting other guys through. I mean, the Saints have a terrible defense. I know they have Jonathan Vilma back, so that might help a little bit, but it shouldn't be that big of an impact, and it really was. They just looked absolutely awful the Eagles' offensive line looked absolutely awful the entire first half, and they were just collapsing. So if you want to blame Michael Vick, I'm not saying he's had a great year, but then another thing you have to look at is how has the defense played this season? Not very well. Early on, they actually weren't playing terrible, but they would really struggle in the fourth quarter. Last night, they just got, the last 2 weeks, and I understand they played 2 very good quarterbacks. Matt Ryan, who right now, him and Peyton Manning are my top 2 for MVP, and then you also played against Drew Brees last night. I get that, but I mean, it just looked so easy for them last night. The Eagles could not wrap up tackles. Chris Ivory had a touchdown where he should have been tackled at the 7-yard line. There were just so many plays last night that the Eagles should have had the guy down, and they didn't. I don't know what the deal was, but they were not able to do it. David Sims in the secondary had a one-on-one situation on a tackle you need to make on Chris Ivory, and he could not do it. The Eagles aren't running the ball enough either. And if you really watched when they ran the ball last night, they were successful. And when they can do that over a whole game, which is rare with Andy Reid and Marty Morningway, but they tend to win that game. You got Bryce Brown back there, and you got LaShawn McCoy. Both of them had very solid performances last night. LaShawn McCoy got 19 carries, which still is not enough. When your quarterback and your offensive line are playing not very well, that means your feature back needs to be getting 25, 26 carries. It sounds like a lot, but then you also have Bryce Brown back there, who is inconsistent, but he does show some flashes, and last night was certainly, he was showing a lot more of those flashes that we've seen throughout the season. He was a 7th round pick, but he looks pretty decent so far. But the Eagles tend to not run the ball enough, and Michael Vick is not a quarterback who can sit back there and throw the ball 50 times a game, which I believe he's done 2 or 3 times this season. That is not Michael Vick. That will never be Michael Vick. And quite honestly, I'm sick of Andy Reid taking running quarterbacks and thinking, I didn't have a problem with him thinking that I can make Michael a better passer. That's fine, and he's done that. But you're not going to be able to take him from a guy who has one of the worst completion percentages in the NFL to all of a sudden he's going to sit back here for the Eagles and lead us to a Super Bowl by throwing the ball 55 times a game. When we have a guy who many people were saying could be the best running back in the NFL coming into this season, right behind him, and we're not using him. But we're going to have a guy who is not built to throw the ball 55, 50, 45, whatever times a game, and we're going to do that anyway. It doesn't make sense. But it's not just Michael Vick, because look at how LaShawn McCoy's played. LaShawn McCoy coming into last night had 3 straight games of under 75 yards rushing. I touched on Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, Brent Selleck. The offensive line has been the worst in the NFL. And people can say that Aaron Rodgers has been sacked a few more times, but Aaron Rodgers is bigger, A. And B, when they're getting through to Aaron Rodgers, yeah, they make the sacks, but they're not getting through every single other time when they're not making the sacks. And Aaron Rodgers is a taller quarterback, and he has bigger wide receivers. Andy Reid built this team. He has an untitled role in the front office, and he's the one that drafted many of these players and built this team. So you can't say he didn't pick the players and that he's just working with what he has, because it's not true. He's built a majority of this team. He's built them on speed, not size, which clearly is not working. And you could say the size part goes with Michael Vick too, but he doesn't have big enough wide receivers. And I said coming into the season, why don't you give Plaxico Burress a call? He had 9 touchdowns last season. 8 of them came in the red zone. And what is the Eagles' problem been this entire season is they don't have a target in the red zone, because Brent Selleck is the only target, and half the time they should be keeping him back as a blocker. Deshaun Jackson is useless in the red zone. He always has been, even when he was playing better a few years ago. Jeremy Maclin is not much better in the red zone. And Riley Cooper's big, but they never put him. They put him in the field 4 or 5 plays a game. So if you're not going to use him, at least bring someone in like Plaxico Burress that you're going to use. He's sitting out there as a free agent. Why wouldn't you give him a call? It makes no sense. I'm so sick of Andy Reid. I'm so sick of this national media reputation that, he's this great coach. He's had the same flaws here for almost 15 years now, and he hasn't fixed them. He doesn't get big enough wide receivers. He doesn't run the ball. He has terrible clock management. He uses the timeouts poorly. He can't use his challenges properly. I mean, I can go on and on and on, and people will say, here's that Philly fan that's just always complaining about everything. If you sat down and watched that game and watched the last 14 seasons of Andy Reid's teams and just continue to see the same exact thing put out there, you would have had enough too. And if you wouldn't, then fine, you're not a real sports fan. It's as simple as that. But if you care about it as much as I do and as much as the people in Philly do, you can say that maybe we're over-passionate sometimes, but one thing we are not in Philly is stupid. And I think people kind of forget to draw the line there somewhere. We're not stupid here. We know our sports in this town as much as anyone, probably more than any other city in the country, and maybe in the world. And then the final two things I want to get to in this video. So basically I'm saying it's time to get rid of Andy Reid. I said that last year and everyone lashed out at me. Well, looks like I was right. And then, I don't know about Michael Vick, but I need to see. I cannot blame Michael Vick for what I've seen this season because he just has not had that type of chance to succeed in the pocket. Because the one other thing I wanted to get to, when you begin to get hit every play, even when you get the protection, you don't know what to do with it because you're so afraid that you're going to screw this one opportunity up. That's the type of situation Michael Vick is in right now, and it's not a situation that is going to make you have great success. Nick Foles is the guy on everyone's bandwagon. A great preseason. I was excited because I said we have a quarterback here in the future that can do things. At Arizona, what was one of the worst things that he did was he coughed the ball up a lot and he fumbled it. Well, if we're going to have an issue with the offensive line and we're already pissed at Michael Vick for fumbling, why would we bring in another quarterback who has had a fumbling problem? And not even why wouldn't we give him a chance, but why do people really think he's the solution? If he was a third-round pick, why are people so sure he's going to be a superstar? Because, well, he beat the Cleveland Browns in the preseason. That's great. He looked great in that game. But that doesn't mean that he's going to step out as a rookie and be a great player. I think Nick Foles can be a good quarterback, but putting him back there now makes absolutely no sense because what do you have to gain by it? Nothing. The offensive line is going to collapse. Mentally, he will be shattered after this season and may not be ever able to recover from it. So putting him back there now makes no sense unless you're Andy Reid and you're trying to find a way to save your job. And quite honestly, Andy Reid should probably do that at this point, is put Nick Foles in there. And if Nick Foles looks good the rest of the year, then maybe Andy Reid can say, well, look, we got something to build on for the future, and maybe he doesn't get fired. That's the only reason. That's the only person it really makes that much sense for. Nick Foles was a third-round pick. He's got a great skill set, great attributes, but I'm not sold that he's ready to step in his first year and get the job done. It's not the same way as it used to be where first-round quarterbacks used to sit a year or two, sometimes even longer, behind a veteran quarterback and just learn. But the point of being a third-round quarterback is that you have the potential to someday make an impact in the NFL, but it is not meant to be your first year usually. And I just don't believe that it's his time right now. Marcus Vick, Michael Vick's brother, was a star at Virginia Tech, got in a lot of trouble there as well. He was on Twitter last night, I think he's MV5 or something, because Michael Vick's MV7. Marcus Vick was talking about how it's time to trade Michael Vick because people are talking about Nick Foles and he doesn't even know who Nick Foles is. Michael Vick after the game was pissed when he was told about this. He said he had no idea, but you could tell he was pissed. He should be, and Marcus Vick should just pretty much keep quiet at this point. I don't think you can blame any of that on Michael Vick. Quite honestly, I don't know if Michael Vick is the solution to this team, but I haven't seen enough to tell me that he is the problem. I have seen enough of Andy Reid over my entire time of watching football to know that maybe he's not the problem and maybe he has done some really good things here, but it's time to move forward and start a new regime and move on. Forward. It's election day. I knew I had to tie that in there somehow. Barack Obama gets reelected. Don't reelect Andy Reid for 2013. See you guys later.
Just a little bit around the corner from fear. Be there, next year, where I'm going.